Everyone, back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings. We still have rain warnings issued in the south. We'll have a look at the UKV as well, look at the precipitation and the temperature, as it is unsettled at the moment, but it's turning much drier over the course of next week with higher pressure building in. However, it will be turning a lot colder as well, to below average temperatures. Nothing ridiculously cold yet, but that possibility comes in throughout the second week of December, as we'll see on the GFS, GEM, ECMWF and the ensembles. It's looking likely we see some incredibly blocked conditions throughout the first week to 2 weeks of December, perhaps longer as well. Potentially the most blocked December we've seen since 2010, and we all know what happened in 2010. At the moment, we're not seeing anything ridiculously cold, because those cold air masses are still lingering to our north, at least in the short to medium term. But in the longer term, we're starting to see signs of bringing some ridiculously cold air masses towards the UK. And if that does happen, we could really be going into the freezer in the longer term. So we'll have a look at that in the second half of the video again. So do remember, if you enjoyed the videos, make sure you like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if we do start on the live radar, you can see that we've got heavy precipitation exiting the far east and the south. You can see a bit more rain moving into parts of northwestern France, and that will impact the south and the southeast over the course of the next sort of 6 to 12 hours though, so areas in the southeast will not escape this precipitation. Further northwards and westwards, we've got some bands of showers moving in, again on the westerly flow, but again they're quite isolated at the moment as I'm recording this around 11:30. If you put on those temperatures, you can see the temperatures are not too bad at the moment. Again, yellow, so generally average sort of conditions around the sort of 10 to 12 degree mark. But of course, it will be declining quite significantly over the course of the next week or so, before it's turning a lot colder by the end of next working week, with a lot of an inversion pattern, frost and fog around. If we do go over to the weather warnings, you can see we have this rain warning issued for the south coast and around the Brighton area from midday today until midnight tonight, and that's that rain across northwestern France moving in over very saturated ground. Again, you can see 10 to 20 millimetres, maybe up to 30 millimetres. And again, that's not a ridiculously high amount of rainfall in one single event. But on the saturated ground, rivers already swelled. It could start to cause some issues, so we've got to take note of that. If we do go over to the UKV now, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days. You can see that rain in the southeast that is clearing away, and over the course of this afternoon we've got showers pushing in from the west, not too frequent into parts of England, Wales and Scotland, but across the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, very frequent, and eventually they all do clear through. And over the course of tomorrow we see a bit more of a dry day, still some showers in the west, but nothing too significant. And as we head into Tuesday, again turning drier, some precipitation trying to push in, little weather fronts getting squeezed away by the higher pressure. But you see by Thursday and Friday, much more stagnant, and the wind coming in from the east, and that is the high pressure up towards Scandinavia, bringing us an easterly wind. And you can see that from the mean sea level pressure. Look at that easterly wind pushing in. And again, look at the upper air temperatures, cold air getting shoved our way, much colder air. Again, look at the dew points, you can see very cold, but not anything ridiculously cold yet. So unlikely to be any widespread winteriness for at least 7 to 10 days, but there could be some isolated winteriness and winteriness over the higher ground. And of course, there are some more extreme runs that bring in more winteriness more earlier than others. If we have a look at max temperatures, you can see this afternoon those temperatures are peaking in around again that 11, 12, 13 degree point. Further north to the west, it's more like 9 or 10. As we head towards Monday afternoon, you can see those temperatures once again getting up to maybe 8 or 9 degrees, maybe 10 or 11 in the far south and the east. And into early hours of Tuesday, look at that widespread frost in the north, still cold in the south as well. For Tuesday afternoon, look at that, 6, 7 degrees in the day, so turning much colder, and that is same as early hours of Wednesday, where it's still down to low single digits, and by Wednesday afternoon, look at that, only 4, 5, 6 degrees, maybe the high stage is 7 or 8 across parts of southern England. So Yeah, it's turning colder late this week and starts December. Look at that widespread frost through central and eastern areas through Thursday and into Thursday afternoon. Look at that, 5 to 7 degrees. Still milder across the upper of Ireland, but most areas are cold. And you can see into early hours of Friday again, cold overnight. So again, nothing ridiculous later next week, but turning considerably colder, a good few degrees colder than it is now, which will mean that it is going to feel real chill to the air. You might need your hat and gloves out and your big winter coats. And of course, it's the week after that where proper winteriness could arrive. As I've alluded to in the last few videos, maybe around that sort of 10th of December point, in around that, a few days either side, that's when we could start to see some real winteriness. Now, if we do over to the GFS and have a look what that is showing, again, we're seeing another extremely blocked run today. Pretty ridiculous, really, seeing this consistency from these models. Some of these charts we're seeing sort of day 14 charts you might see a few times a winter, but we're seeing them every single day, every single run. So it really is quite ridiculous the blocking we're seeing at the moment. If we do see westerly winds at the moment, but high pressure built over the top of us, but an easterly flow in. And again, nothing too ridiculously cold, and actually that wind veers more southeasterly, so it could bring a milder air mass in for a time around early next week. But look at that high pressure retrogresses up towards Greenland and starts putting a bitterly cold northeasterly wind, and we would be going very cold there. Again, dependent on the side of the low pressure we get, you can see that perhaps slightly milder air is trying to nudge in, but you can see mostly there we are in very cold air from around the 7th, 8th of December onwards, and even the GFS today lingers us in that very cold air from around next weekend onwards, pretty much consistently all the way to the middle of December. And look at that cold air mass there. One more push of cold air, one more push around the high pressure. The -10, -15 line will be pushing in. Couldn't even rule out the -20 getting close by. Again, look at the potential equivalent temperature, bitterly cold, and the temperature deviation. Look at all that cold air in northwestern Europe. Ridiculous, the cold air coming our way. And of course, it's being replaced by much warmer air towards Greenland, as you do get with these sort of patterns. You get warm air pumped into the Arctic, cold air pumped out. So again, GFS going bitterly cold here once again. If we have a look at the GM, see how that does compare. Again, high pressure building in at the moment, easterly winds. Those easterly winds veer more southeasterly, bringing a slightly warmer air mass around maybe the 4th, 5th of December, before eventually the high pressure moves up towards Greenland, and you can see a northerly or northeasterly wind developing. And look at that bitterly cold air flooding our way. Give that another couple of days, we'd be in the freezer. And again, look at the temperature deviation, bitterly cold air heading our way out of the Arctic. If you do go with the ECMWF, see how that does compare up until day 10. Again, high pressure building in at the moment, easterly winds trying to push in, and we stay very cold and easterly, and right towards day 10, still blocked, not quite more direct cold than the GEM and the GFS, but still an easterly wind and that high pressure trying to nudge towards Greenland, bringing us more colder air. You can see, as I said, around maybe the 5th or 6th of December, there could be a slightly milder spell as warmer air wraps around the low to our south. The GFS kept us on the cold side of that, the GM put us on the milder side, and as we'll see on the Ensemble members in a minute, I think most models have us on the milder side. Again, nothing ridiculously warm, just average sort of conditions at the upper air levels. We probably wouldn't actually see too much of a change at the surface, but yeah, slightly milder upper air temperatures could come in for a couple of days as that low pressure brings in more of a southeasterly wind before the high pressure brings back the northerly. So we can see that on the ensembles now, they have only just refreshed, and you can see how we're going colder next week, brief milder spell, and then turning colder beyond that towards the 10th of December as well. So, yeah, as I said, you can see that bump of milder air around that 6th, 7th of December point before it returns colder once again. We can see cold air moving in next week, and that's where we could see frequent sort of frost and fog and very cold conditions in the day. Low precipitation as well, so it's turning a lot drier as well, and yeah, generally a lot colder. You can see the dew points as well, generally getting towards freezing, so very cold, and the TVC temperatures as well, getting well below that sort of 7 or 8 degree mark, so yeah, turning increasingly colder with that. If we do compare it to the ECMWF over the course of the next couple of weeks, again, Cold next week, brief bump in milder weather for maybe 2 or 3 days, and then turning colder once again. As I said, it's around that sort of 8th, 9th, 10th of December point where I think we could be plunged into the freezer from having a look at the latest model data. But regardless, the week leading up to that will be cold, will be below average, potentially could have some winteriness in the north, and maybe further southwards and to low-lying areas, dependent on those upper air temperatures. Some of these colder and summer members possible, but for the average here, I wouldn't say so. So yeah, it's looking increasingly colder over the next couple of weeks. Perhaps the most blocked and cold start we've had to December for quite a few years. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be quite continuous. That's the thing. It's not just one little cold spell here of 2 or 3 days. This blocking is persistent, and it could really peak around the middle of the month, giving us our coldest weather then. So we'll have to see exactly what happens, but it's continuing to look cold and blocked, and the possibility of some bitterly cold weather increases by the day. But for the time being, it's just going colder than average, nothing ridiculous, so we've just got to keep an eye on it. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.